to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Lord, yes. I will trust and obey when your spirit speaks to me. With my whole heart I'll agree, and my answer.
This surveillance video shows a woman on a bicycle falling into an opening on a rising drawbridge.
We often try to live life by our own instructions. Well, and then you see what happens. Yeah, that just happened. This is part 2 of Stick with the Instructions. God bless you for your time, and please be safe.
I'll say yes, Lord. I'll say, Lord, yes. To your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Lord.
Jesus is saying, I know what happened, but I want to know what you say happened. And I don't know if you've ever asked a child a question already knowing their answer and already knowing the answer that they're going to give. Yet, as you try to teach them, try to mature and perfect them, you ask them anyway, hoping that in them hearing their wrong answer, they'll be convicted to search their hearts for the right answer. The problem is, some have been so wrong for so long that they think they've mastered how to make a wrong look all right. No, not you, but that other holy roller up the street, over the hill, and around the corner. Those who are deceiving themselves is what James says. Hearing the word, but not doing the word. Those who know God's instructions but live according to their own instructions. And these Christians, just like you and I, they knew the word. All About God Ministries writes that as they faithfully recounted what they knew everything and said what was in harmony with the gospel's teaching about Jesus. Jesus, remember, is still unknown to them. But yet they listened. And then Jesus replied, how foolish you are and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. And 2 points since you asked. One, I'm glad these Christians didn't lose their religiosity and start talking about Pastor said this and my denomination says that. That's point 1. And number 2, since you asked, is to refer to point number 1. Because even when you don't agree, you're showing what kind of Christian you are by how you disagree. They listened to this visitor, and as emotional as they were, they listened with an ear of interest and not an attitude of only wanting to be inspired. And I think it's about time that we decide that our inspiration needs to be born through our education, because after service is over and all of our armpits have been sweated out and all of our edges have been sweated up, God is still there asking, what is it that you're talking about? They were emotional. They were shaken and despondent because though they didn't know how, they had every faith that Jesus was going to rise in victory and, according to their narrative, become king. But Jesus was treated with disgrace, and I don't know if you can hear the hammers ringing, but surely He died on Calvary. These followers were able to tell Jesus all the facts, but because their facts didn't fit their narrative to them, the facts no longer fit. They had lost hope because Christ had been crucified. But the instructions demanded that to fulfill their hope, Mary's child must be crucified. And if Jesus, the Christ, was able to stick to the instructions even as they drove the nails through his flesh, how is it we can't stick to the instructions today? Jesus said, "You've got to be kidding me." He wanted to know, with all that is said in the word, why couldn't they just rely on the word? He says, how long does it take for you to believe all that the prophets told you? He's saying, I love you, and I know what you said, but don't you know what I said? He said, I get your disappointment, and I know what they did, but don't you remember me telling you over and over again what I was going to do? And a lot of us can recite God's text. The question is, do we believe God's text? It's in our head, but his word is not in our heart. David Guzik writes that Jesus began to teach them what was surely one of the most spectacular Bible studies ever taught concerning the Messiah. Jesus taught them that their notions of the Messiah were not in line with these scriptures. The King James Version reads, beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. The text reads, he expounded, which means he taught. As he taught the text, he stuck close to the text. When Jesus explained things, Guzik writes, he didn't use fanciful allegories or speculative ideals. And all that is a nice way of saying that Jesus taught the word without adding instructions and without taking any away. And in a time when we for sure don't know what tomorrow holds, it's a good time to accept that the more we cut and paste the text to fit our wants, needs, biases, and denominations, the more we get away from understanding God's will, promises, requirements, and his expectations. These Christians put their faith in a God that they created instead of a God that is the God. And that left them hoping for a future that God never promised would be. Yet they allowed a visitor to open their hearts to the true word, and the true word then filled their hearts. And now, as so many are coming to realize that the only hope we have is in the one true living God, I pray that you also open your hearts to this visitor who is committed to explaining what is said in the scriptures for no other reason to fill your hearts with the hope of God. So stay safe. Call somebody and let them know God is real, that you love them, miss them, concerned, and care for them. And don't compromise God's word. God bless you.
Come on, everybody, put your hands together. It's got to get better. All over the world, listen to these words. People come. People come. People go. People go. Your life has been out of control. You're confused. But don't worry. Don't worry your soul.